The numbers swam. Not like they were blurry, but like they had detached from the paper, floating in midair, swirling into a sickening vortex right in front of my eyes. They were dollars. Thousands of them. On a credit statement I didn't recognize, for an account I didn't open, with my name staring back at me in crisp, black ink. My stomach bottomed out. It wasn't possible. This account, this bank, the purchases listed, none of it belonged to my life. Not the designer clothes I never bought, the plane tickets to places I'd never been, the expensive restaurant tabs that made my own careful budget feel like pocket change. And the signature. A hurried scrawl at the bottom of the application form. It looked enough like mine to fool someone in a rush, but studying it now, my hand trembled. It wasn't mine. The air in the kitchen, usually warm with the scent of brewing coffee, turned ice cold. Every sound seemed amplified. The distant hum of traffic, the ticking clock on the wall, the sudden, violent thumping of my own heart against my ribs. I sank into a chair, the paper rustling in my shaking hand, the numbers still swirling, pulling me down. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. Our life wasn't perfect, not in a fairy tale way, but it felt solid, like a well-built house. Foundation was strong, walls were plumb, roof didn't leak. We had comfortable routines, shared jokes, plans for the future. Mortgaged, sure, but manageable. 2 incomes, 2 cars paid off, a decent chunk in savings. We talked about renovations, maybe a small cottage upstate someday. He was steady, reliable. The kind of man who fixed things himself, remembered my favorite coffee order, held my hand in the car. He wasn't grand or flashy, but he was ours. He was my safe harbor in a world that often felt chaotic and unpredictable. We had trust. That was the bedrock. Trust that we were a team, working towards the same goals, sharing the same burdens, building the same life, brick by careful brick. I believed in the life we were building. Every extra hour at work, every skipped luxury, it all felt worth it because it was for us, for our future. The future he painted with words and promises, a future where we grew old together, secure and content. The first hint wasn't the statement itself. It was a weird little notification in my email, buried deep, easily missed. Something about a new account linked to my primary banking profile. I almost deleted it, thinking it was spam. But some tiny prickle of unease, made me click. It led to a login page I didn't recognize. Curiosity, or maybe a subconscious dread, made me try logging and using credentials I sometimes used elsewhere. And it worked. That's when the statements started appearing online. Multiple accounts. Different banks. All in my name. The first one was a shock, a cold plunge. The others, they were waves crashing over me, each bigger than the last, pulling me further out into a sea of debt and deceit. It wasn't just one card, one mistake. It was calculated, systemic. Each statement a fresh stab, listing thousands upon thousands of dollars spent on things I would never buy, in places I'd never been. The dates went back months, maybe even a year. How had I not seen it? How could he have done this? I tried talking to him, casually at first. Honey, did you sign up for some kind of loyalty program I don't know about? I got a weird email. He was smooth. Too smooth. A shrug, a dismissive wave of the hand. Oh, yeah, maybe? Companies send junk all the time. Don't worry about it. He didn't flinch. No telltale flicker in his eyes. Just calm, boring reassurance. It almost worked. Almost. But the pit in my stomach grew. The emails kept coming. The statements started arriving in the mail, tucked into envelopes I didn't recognize, often mixed with his mail, or sometimes, I realized later, pulled from the mailbox before I ever saw them. I started getting calls about late payments, calls that hung up the moment I identified myself, leaving me with a dial tone and a rising sense of panic. I felt like I was losing my mind. Was I imagining things? Was it some elaborate mistake? Identity theft, maybe? But who? And why my name? It didn't make sense. My quiet, reliable husband. The man who worried about utility bills and clipped coupons. He couldn't possibly be involved. The thought felt like sacrilege. It would shatter the entire foundation of our life. The financial worries started to feel physical. A constant knot in my chest. Sleepless nights staring at the ceiling, running through the numbers, the dates, the impossible purchases. I started going through his things, hating myself for it, but compelled by a desperate need for answers. His desk drawer, his briefcase. Nothing. He was meticulous. Too meticulous. It fueled the fear. If he was hiding this well, what else was he hiding? Then came the phone bill, tucked inside a different, innocuous envelope. I was about to toss it, assuming it was junk, when a name caught my eye. A number I didn't recognize, listed repeatedly, hour after hour, text messages, calls, late into the night. Scrolling through the call log felt like peeling back layers of skin. The frequency, the timing. It wasn't just a friend. A quick search online, plugging the number into a public directory site, and a name popped up. A woman's name. A name I'd heard him mention once or twice. A coworker. My blood ran cold. The plane tickets. The expensive dinners. The designer clothes. A pattern began to emerge, horrifying in its clarity. The financial betrayal was bad enough. It was a gut punch, a violation of trust. But this twisted the knife. It wasn't just money. It was a whole other life, built on the ashes of mine, funded by my future, orchestrated with my identity. He wasn't just cheating. He was dismantling me piece by piece, using my own name as the weapon. I confronted him again. This time, armed with the phone records, the statements, the undeniable evidence. I didn't shout. My voice was a low, trembling whisper, but it was packed with years of unspoken trust turning into white-hot rage. I laid the papers on the table, the phone bill face up. "Explain this," I said. He froze. For the first time, the mask slipped. His face went pale, his eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape route that wasn't there. The calm facade shattered, replaced by a flicker of fear, then something harder. Anger. Deflection. He started shouting, accusing me of snooping, of not trusting him, of trying to ruin his life. He twisted everything, painting himself as the victim of my paranoia. He admitted the affair, eventually, spat it out like a curse. But the money? The accounts? He waved his hand dismissively. "Just some business, expenses I put on a card temporarily," he said. "For work. I was going to pay it back. It's nothing? Tens of thousands of dollars, nothing? Used for someone else?" The gaslighting was thick, suffocating. He made me feel small, crazy, like I was overreacting to a few bills. Everything was falling apart. Not just the marriage, but the carefully constructed reality I had lived in. The man I loved, the man I trusted, was a stranger, a liar, a thief. He wasn't just hurting me. He was actively destroying my financial future, my credit, my good name. The debt mounted. Collectors started calling my work number. The stress was relentless, a physical weight pressing down on me. I lost weight. I couldn't sleep. Every conversation felt like a potential minefield. Friends offered platitudes. Family members seemed unsure who to believe. He was a master manipulator, and he was sowing seeds of doubt everywhere. I felt completely alone, adrift in a sea of his lies and my mounting debt. The house felt like a prison. Every corner held a memory, now tainted. His presence was a constant source of tension, a reminder of the betrayal. I knew I couldn't stay, but leaving felt impossible with the financial mess he'd created. He held the keys to my future, and he was using them to lock me out. I knew I had to do something. But what? Divorce felt too simple. It didn't address the core issue, the financial sabotage, the identity theft. I was terrified of the debt, terrified of the legal system, terrified of confronting him and the woman he'd chosen over me, the woman he'd funded with my name. I felt powerless. Small. Like a bug under his heel. I spent days researching, late into the night, huddled over my laptop, the glow illuminating the fear in my eyes. I read about divorce, about debt, about fraud. And then I stumbled upon something that changed everything. Identity theft. When it's committed by a spouse. The complexities. The specific legal avenues. And the potential severity. It wasn't just a civil matter. It could be a crime. A federal crime. The thought felt like a small spark in the overwhelming darkness. Federal charges. It sounded drastic. Terrifying. But it also sounded like power. A way to fight back against something that wasn't just personal betrayal, but a violation of law, a deep injustice. It wasn't just about getting rid of him. It was about reclaiming my name, my identity, my future. It was about holding him accountable, not just for breaking my heart, but for breaking the law. I found a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. A specialist. Someone who understood fraud, identity theft, and the intricacies of federal law. Walking into her office felt like stepping into a sanctuary. The air was calm, the light was soft, and her gaze was steady, intelligent, empathetic. I laid it all out, the statements, the phone records, the timeline, the gaslighting, the fear. She listened patiently, her pen scratching notes on a pad. When I finished, she leaned back, a grim determination in her eyes. "This isn't just a divorce case," she said. "This is criminal fraud. Identity theft. When it crosses state lines, as those plane tickets indicate, it becomes federal. That's a different ballgame." The word federal hung in the air. It was heavy, serious. It meant consequences far beyond alimony or asset division. It meant law enforcement, prosecutors, potentially prison. The fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach, but it was mingled now with something else. A growing sense of purpose. A steel rod forming in my spine. We started building the case. Meticulously. Gathering every statement, every email notification, every shred of evidence. The lawyer explained the process. It wouldn't be quick. It wouldn't be easy. He would fight. He would lie. He would try to turn it all back on me. But we had the truth. And we had the law. The tension at home was unbearable. We lived like strangers in the same house, a cold war waged with silence and hostile glances. He continued his life, oblivious, or perhaps willfully ignorant, of the storm gathering around him. He thought he was in control, that he could sweet-talk his way out of it or bully me into submission. He didn't know I had found my armor. He didn't know I had found my weapon. The day came. It wasn't in a courtroom. Not yet. It was orchestrated precisely, a carefully planned moment designed to deliver maximum impact. My lawyer called me. "It's time," she said. "Arrange a meeting. You, him, and me. Tell him it's about settling the financial dispute." I set it up. A neutral location. A small conference room in my lawyer's office building. He arrived looking smug, confident. He probably thought I was finally ready to negotiate, to accept his version of events, to make things easy for him. The mistress wasn't there, of course. This was a business meeting in his eyes. He sat across the table, a slight, condescending smile playing on his lips. My lawyer sat beside me, calm and ready. I felt strangely detached, my emotions tucked away in a safe place. This wasn't personal anymore. This was strategy. The lawyer began calmly, laying out the facts, the statements, the debt. He interrupted her, blustering, repeating his lies about temporary business expenses, blaming me for exaggerating. He leaned back, arms crossed, a picture of false righteousness. "Look," he said, addressing me directly, ignoring the lawyer. "We can work this out. This is just a marital issue. We don't need lawyers getting involved." My lawyer held up a hand, stopping his tirade. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the air like ice. "Mr. Husband's last name," she said. "This is not just a marital issue. It's not just a financial dispute. What you did was identity theft. What you did was criminal fraud." His smug expression wavered. He shifted in his seat. "That's ridiculous," he scoffed, but there was a tremor in his voice. "You can't prove that. It was my money anyway, technically. We were married." My lawyer leaned forward slightly, her gaze unwavering. "We have documentation of multiple credit accounts opened in her name without her knowledge or consent," she stated, her tone factual, relentless. "We have evidence of purchases made in other states, paid for with those accounts. That constitutes crossing state lines." She paused, letting the words sink in. His face was starting to lose color. He looked at me, then back at her, confusion clouding his eyes.
He still didn't get it.
He thought this was about debt collection, maybe civil penalties. He didn't understand the weight of the words she was using. Then, she delivered the blow. "Based on the evidence of identity theft and interstate fraud," she said, her voice clear and strong, "we have filed a report with the appropriate federal agencies. As of this morning, the U.S. Attorney's Office is reviewing the case for potential federal criminal charges." The effect was immediate. Devastating. His eyes went wide, his jaw dropped. The smugness vanished, replaced by pure, unadulterated terror. He stared at my lawyer, then at me, his face a mask of disbelief. He sputtered, trying to find words, but none came out. And then he screamed. It wasn't a shout of anger. It was a sound torn from the depths of his being, a raw, visceral cry of shock and utter betrayal. He slammed his fist on the table, making the water glasses jump. "Federal," he shrieked. You filed federal charges? You bitch. You wouldn't." He stood up abruptly, knocking his chair back. He looked cornered, wild. He hadn't just underestimated me, he hadn't even conceived of this possibility. He thought he was negotiating a divorce settlement. He walked into a room where the ground was about to open up beneath him. The plot twist wasn't just my action, it was the level I took it to, the legal avenue he hadn't anticipated, the consequences he couldn't gaslight or charm his way out of. He thought he had destroyed my life. I had just unleashed the full, terrifying power of the federal government onto his. The look on his face as he realized he wasn't just losing his wife and his money, but potentially his freedom, was a cold, satisfying vindication. He continued to rave, threats and accusations tumbling out, but the fear in his eyes drowned out the words. He was blindsided, completely and utterly. He had been so busy weaving his web of lies and deceit, so confident in his ability to manipulate the situation, that he never considered I would find the one legal weapon that could truly dismantle him. He thought he was playing chess. I was playing a different game entirely, one he didn't even know the rules of. And I had just checkmated him in the most unexpected way possible. The aftermath was a blur of legal procedures, depositions, and quiet, grinding stress. He hired expensive lawyers, of course, but the evidence was overwhelming, and the federal system moves with a different kind of weight. There were no grand courtroom dramas, mostly just the slow, methodical turning of legal gears. Emotionally, it was a wasteland. The initial rush of vindication faded, replaced by a profound weariness. I had won the battle, but the war had left deep scars. The financial mess he'd created took years to untangle, involving credit repair agencies, endless phone calls, and the constant anxiety of seeing debt accrued by another person's selfish actions. Every time I had to explain what happened, I felt a fresh wave of shame and anger, reliving the betrayal. The divorce went through relatively quickly, the financial settlement heavily influenced by the pending criminal case. The mistress, I heard, disappeared from his life the moment things got legally serious. Turns out, she wasn't interested in standing by her man when he faced hard time. Another layer of emptiness in the life he'd built on lies. He faced the consequences. The federal charges led to a plea deal, avoiding a lengthy trial but resulting in a significant prison sentence and restitution orders that he would likely spend the rest of his life trying to fulfill. It wasn't revenge, not in a satisfying Hollywood way. It was justice. Cold, hard, necessary justice. Seeing him taken away, knowing he was finally being held accountable, brought a strange mix of relief and sorrow. The man I married was gone, replaced by this shell, this criminal. Rebuilding my life was a long, slow process. It started with practical steps, repairing my credit score, establishing new financial accounts, finding a new place to live that didn't hold the ghosts of our shared past. But the deeper work was healing the trust. Trust in myself, in my judgment, and in others. I learned to be more cautious, more observant, but also more resilient than I ever thought possible. There were moments of deep despair, moments where the weight of it all felt unbearable. But I kept going, one step at a time. I focused on small victories, a credit score improving, a bill finally cleared, a day where I didn't think about him at all. I found strength in unexpected places, the quiet support of a true friend, the simple act of planting a garden, the feeling of financial independence slowly returning. The house, the one he thought he was securing with my identity, was sold. I used my share to pay down some of the debt and start fresh. It felt symbolic, closing that chapter, dismantling the physical space that had housed such profound betrayal. Years have passed now. The debt is mostly gone. My credit is restored. The fear has receded, replaced by a quiet strength. The scar is still there, a reminder of what happened, but it doesn't define me. It's just a part of my story. I learned that sometimes the quietest person has the biggest fight in them. That the law, while complex and daunting, can be a powerful tool for justice. And that reclaiming your life after it's been stolen, piece by painful piece, is the most profound victory of all. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.